Well, my good, Cathy, looking weeks did our talk to stock. Thank you very much, Minister. I'm delighted to be able to make some comments on this today. And Kate Dulces, I'd like to, as I don't know if I ever addressed you in this format and legislation, to wish you well as a Oireachtas, and to thank you for your cooperation and courtesy. And anytime I contact you anywhere or my group, I think we get a very reasonable response, and that's very much appreciated by us and by all members of the House. And to wish you well. I was a clown going there. Minister, this legislation is very important. I've been very critical, and I've been out in the jail for the last while, so I was listening to the last two contributions, so it's a diverse range of views, and that's very important. That's why we're here. And duly elected, thankfully, for the time being, to make our feelings known, but we do need some reform. Now, I'm a man, like my colleague here, likes to get up in the morning and do a day's work, and is going into the evening or the night, so be it, and get up tomorrow after and field out again and work hard. I declare, I suppose, I'm self-employed like the previous deputy. And those kind of people are very, very important to our country, especially now, above all time, with such huge pressures coming on. And certainly, I like Deputy Hilly Ray, and they were welcomed here this morning, the Stuttering Association of Ireland, a wonderful group that came up to meet us today. And there's so many groups in the AV room. So, you know, yesterday, for instance, so we had maternity care, we had breastfeeding, we had the forestry people in the monastery, a diverse range of people that come in to meet us. I don't call them lobbies. They're just trying to improve the lifestyle and the human life of people on an hourly and a daily and a weekly and a monthly and a yearly basis. And great people, and many of them volunteers. For instance, the group today, a former town councillor in Templemore, Michael Ryan, was among them, and others. They're all volunteers. They haven't got a shilling from anyone. The work that they have done in the year and a half while they're up there, and they're gone European-wide now, international. They're going actually international tomorrow or Saturday at 2 o'clock on Zoom, because stuttering is something that, you know, and it's an impediment, obviously, and it's a difficulty, and it wasn't understood. And I have a better understanding from listening to those gentlemen today in the AV room. A far better understanding of why. And there was a teacher among them, from your own county, Minister, who's, you know, 25 or 30 years teaching, and, you know, quite buying the class or whatever, or, you know, and we have now seen so many special needs assistants and people, because we have diagnosis of young Dini Oga with different learning impediments, should I say. And, you know, it's very important that those people can come in and meet us, and that we have a forum to meet them. And I thank the ushers and the staff here for always facilitating them, and the secretariat here as well. As I said, they're diverse. Before the budget, which came earlier this year, they were all cut off the hook. And it's a natural thing that these groups, the motor industry, the pharmacists organisation, GPs, you name it, look, with so many of them, we're running around, meeting themselves together because the budget came early, and the IFA, and and many others, and they have a job to do to represent their members. And remember, their members pay where there are paid employees there in those organisations, and so far some of them aren't, but some that are, they're paid for by the members, who have paid their taxes, paid their VAT, and paid everything else as well, and given valuable employment up and down the country, and especially in rural Ireland and all over the country for that matter. So we can't have them all branded as vagabonds and people that are trying to twist people's arms. It's a democratic process that they're involved in, and it's a democratic right and entitlement for them to meet their elected members of all parties and just explain their difficulties and issues with the present taxation code or the present, you know, restrictions. They've had a very tough time with Brexit, and now with the imports and everything else and exports, so it's important. And if they do clinics, meet people every day of the week. Some of us meet them, I know Deputy Hilly Ray here, whose clinics right until nearly midnight in Kerry, and suits certain people to come certain times. So that must be never taken away. And I wouldn't like to have unintended consequences of this bill. And I've come very strong on this recently, the unintended consequences of legislation. We're passing legislation here in the last 2 years especially, and before that even, that is very punitive, has a very punitive impact on self-employed and job creator, the people that do job creation and that are running business, whether it be one man and one woman show or 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 at the Leaper firm that's down outside Killarney, or the many industries in my and like at the moment, you know, Minister, with the savage costs increases of the electricity and gas, like the supermarkets are lobbying us, and any shops, butchers, you name them, everything, and it's using electricity. They just can't cope with the bills. And you have brought in the IBEES scheme, I think, and that will be a help, but it's not going to cover. And unfortunately, many of them are going to fall through that. So if they know right, according to talk to Ella, to come up and make their cases to us and meet us and lobby us, they have, of course. So we must make sure that this legislation is robust. Transparency International obviously are not happy with the proposed legislation. According to their surveys and their comments, they're saying it's mainly technical. And the previous piece of the bill that has been discussed, if you allow me, look, I missed it because it ran so fast and I was at meetings, and when I came in, actually, I was coming in to speak on that, and I'm very disappointed that I didn't get in. But if you allow me, look, maybe just is one. It's Thursday, good. No, because we've seen some quite successful court cases recently with gang terrorism and everything else, and we've seen where, in light of developments, related to the witness protection programme in Dublin, Gangland, I'm wondering, is there any chance that the Minister, and didn't you, Minister, but you might pass it on, exploring any similar arrangements in relation to the 1996 murder of Sylvia Tulska de Blanca? That's going on for so long, it's an embarrassment to our country. I think it's very important that should be explored, and that should be, I wanted to say that here today because it's important. Thank you, Chairman. But this bill, there are certainly we need, and we'll be putting on amendments, I believe. That's if we have agreement in our group, or a majority view, because we have different opinions about the revolving door. And I'm saying this for years before I ever came into members of this House. I've seen retired senior public officials who are retired very young, and 2 days later they're in a good job, and they have the inside track. So I think you're proposing a year of this, Minister, of cooling off period. I certainly think you should be 3 to 5 years, because it's too close and it gives unfair edge. That's why they're headhunters. It gives unfair edge to people with information. From the point of view of an ordinary small business, and people trying to compete with bigger business, and they have the resources to bring in, we call them lobbyists, not lobbyists as such by name, but people that know their way around and know their way. But we have to be very careful here when we talk about former members, then not being allowed access to the car park, because some of us don't. We can't cycle from Tipperary to Dublin, and there's no train within 30 miles of me, so. And often I got to spend for yourself, Minister, and as well, and I appreciate that, and others, because I have difficulty at the moment with my stool. But we can't have this situation where I was delighted to bump into a former senator and have a good bit of banter with him here 2 weeks ago, the former Senator Donny Cassidy. Delighted to meet him. And he gave long service to him. Many others, not just mentioned him because he's the most recent I met. And if some of us had their way, they locked the gates to him and tell him to keep out and stay at home and go away and go hide. So we must respect the people who went before us. Respect is very important across society, and compassion, especially in this day and age. But Donny gave sterling service to his party, but to his people, but to this House. And he was a great man and a very entertaining, and a lot of employment too. A lot of employment, his family, and still do. So I was delighted to meet him. So you learned something off of him. Great to meet I nearly said a fallen hero, but a fallen colleague, but a retired colleague that's here coming to meet us, and that's very important. And to have hang-ups about he driving in the car. I know he drives a good car, but I mean he's always a bit of style and panache, but he's welcome. And big fearfalter, Dini Marshin Igoni, and for me anyway, I want to welcome him and say that. So it's a difficult piece of legislation, Minister, but it is kind of feeble and kind of weak when Transparency International in these groups aren't happy with it, and that's the aspect I'd be worried about. And then you have heard my other contributions here, and big conglomerates they don't need lobbyists. They don't need lobbies because they're just so powerful, and we can't rein them in. And we can't. We see now at the moment with the gouging in the electric and gas. So we and the Euro independents are adamant and striving very hard to use our natural resources. And we have met people that want to get Gary Rowe and Isle and everything else back in. And these can't be called lobbies because they're investors in our country. They want to go out and see what resources. They know there's a certain amount there, and it could be a lot more there. And they'll bring it ashore and cost the Irish taxpayer ain't fingering them on, not a single penny, not a single cent, sorry, now it is. And they're kind of brandished as people now that aliens. When parts of my county was out of power last night, not due to the storm, but when they can face power outages, when people are investing in generators and people are worried about their business keeping them going, and the same with the gas companies. And you know, when I then, as elected representative, stand up here and ask Minister Ryan to clarify for me whether he intends, and there's a memo on his desk, to put ready-mix concrete into the gas line off Kinsale. That gas line is full of, it's empty, but it has served the country well, and it's a very valuable piece of infrastructure. And I have asked him to answer me that question, and he's refused. And I've asked the Junior Minister that shouldn't happen, because we have people who will bring gas to Ireland and floating terminals, and until we get into the renewables. But I saw one of our renewables last night got hit with lightning, and there was a smoke balloon off it. So they're vulnerable too. So we're all vulnerable. And systems and things are, but I'm just saying that we must talk to these people who are willing to invest, and keep the lights on for us here. And we're doing a transition period, yes, but we're very slow about it. But we're doing it, yes, and we all want to go there, but we want to be, don't cut off our nose to spite our face. And the same with this legislation. We don't want to, you know, we're not walking in eggshells, but we certainly want to have it robust enough to deal with you know, serious lobbying that's not welcome, and then ordinary people to be heard, because they're not being heard a lot of the time, and they're not being, they feel they're not being heard and represented. So it's a very thin line to do on that. So to get it right. So I think we'll be assessing and studying the legislation and trying to bring forward amendments, but we normally get caught with amendments that are cost to the state. But this shouldn't be any cost in this, because it's legislation that is, you know, it's not really a huge cost on anyone to have good practices and have them observed and rolled. And then, if we do, when this legislation is passed, who's going to regulate it? Here comes the question: who's going to? How's it going to be regulated? SIPO are overburdened, totally overburdened, as they are at present, totally overburdened. So they haven't the resources, and we've seen with different issues, they haven't the powers either to deal with, you know, issues at present. Unless you're going to give them way new powers and way more resources. Minister, I don't know. Town clock, let's go. I didn't know, because the clock went off. I hope the lights aren't going.
The power is gone.
I hope the power isn't going. Maybe you're cutting down or sparing it, but it's the leak. No, with the WikiLeaks yesterday. And anyway, no, but look, SIPO need to be given more. They have power to regulate. We make returns to them as members of the House and as councillors and public representatives, yes. And I've offered, in fairness to the SIPO, I've met them, and they come in with our group, and they've given us advice and given us a better understanding, because they're only been, I don't know how many years now, but they weren't there when I came in here first, so it's very important that they meet, and they're willing. And I thank the officials from SIPO for coming in and meeting and just explaining bits of the role and remit and legislation that they were implementing that we weren't sure of, so we had to make sure of that. So the resources to police this, so, you know, it's very, very necessary, Minister. So look, Minister, I wish you well with it and your department. I just hope that, you know, the likes of Transparency International, groups like that, are listened to. I know they're not elected to any parliament, but we must listen to them as well. And I suppose we should consult widely and try and have this legislation. And I'm not going to mention any names, but certainly others did, former members of the House going from departments into lobbying pretty immediately. That's anathema to me, as far as I'm concerned. I think it should be at least 3 to 5 years minimum. I would say 5, but certainly 3 is a bottom line. So, Minister, I wish you well with it, and good night, good Slán.
Good man.